now we have Steve Wexner. I know he's with us. It's impossible to introduce Steve. There's no way to do it. And I want to take this opportunity to congratulate him in person, although through the computer, on his appointment as co-editor-in-chief of surgery. There is few things that he can add to his CV because he is Steve Wexner. So we thought he would need more time in order to speak about education and training in this new situation, this new world that we live in. So Steve, the floor is yours, and thank you very much for sharing your time with us and your knowledge. Thank you.
Well, thank you indeed, Julio. It's a pleasure to be with you, albeit remotely, for the second consecutive year. Happy to support the program and you. I enjoy our work together. Thanks for your comments about surgery. This journal gets a huge number of submissions every year, and that's why there's 2 co-editors-in-chief. I have big shoes to fill with Andy Warshaw preceding me and Mike Saar having preceded me. So I'll do the best I can. I'm sure I'm going to rely on a lot of people to help out to make the journal, to take it to the next level. So thanks very much. It's a new opportunity, and I must say it's a heavily HPB journal, so I'm going to get a whole new education besides colorectal surgery. I can share my screen and open this, I believe. So you should be able to see my talk now.
Yes, perfect.
Go to the full screen. So what I want to talk about briefly, I don't want to abuse the privilege you've given me of a few extra minutes, but to talk a little bit about the future of education and training, which, you know, as we say in the US at least, that sometimes, invention comes from necessity, right? I mean, necessity is the mother of invention, because we have this situation since March with the pandemic, and suddenly people who are very reluctant to use video education find it's the only way to do things. And social media, which was shunned by many people, is suddenly recognized as the way to instantly communicate facts. Unfortunately, not always facts, but information, shall we say, around the globe, and you can pick which platform you like. To give a context, in the United States, education has many formats, as it does throughout the world. So there's undergraduate medical education, and in the United States, we have 115 medical schools, and you can see the distribution. I'm down here near Miami. Here we have affiliated with Cleveland Clinic, Florida, Florida Atlantic University, just north of us, Florida International University, just south of us, the University of Miami, University of South Florida, University of Florida, Florida Central University, and University of Florida. So that's our state here. You know, you can see the clusters in California, New York, but there's 155 medical schools, and as is the case with population, not a whole lot in Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, South and North Dakota, just given populations, and the Northeast is what it is. So despite this wide geographic disparity, education is the same everywhere. And education was heavily impacted by COVID-19. So in March, the Liaison Commission on Medical Education, which accredits all 155 medical schools, said that fourth-year clerkships could be delayed or canceled, told students not to show up in person, and that things had to be done remotely, although they also recognized there's no substitute for direct patient interaction. So they said that you can't have unlimited clinical clerkships exclusively online without ever examining a patient. So it's a challenge, because you couldn't get in to see the patient, yet you're limited on how much you could do virtually. And that called for some creativity. Fortunately, the medical students are back throughout the country in various formats. Depends upon the penetration of COVID-19 in a given area. And the other thing is, people went away from grades. The LCME said, well, maybe if you're not really with the student on a daily basis, it shouldn't be a grade, but just simply pass-fail. We move on to graduate medical education, and in the United States, there are just over 12,000 GME programs. So this includes internal medicine and all of the medical subspecialties, cardiology, gastroenterology, so on and so forth, general surgery, all the surgical subspecialties, psychiatry, pathology, radiology, everything. Almost 150,000 trainees in the US at any given time. First thing happened during COVID-19, get away from rotations that require travel, stay home. Secondly, the interview process. This perhaps is one of the biggest changes of all. So the curriculum for med students in graduate education could easily change to virtual grand rounds as we're doing today. We had in our grand rounds in general surgery this past Tuesday, Neil Floch, who everybody knows from Twitter. Neil has 140,000 or something like that followers. He's a bariatric surgeon from Connecticut. He works with social media for the journal for which my office next door neighbor, Raul Rosenthal, is the co-editor-in-chief of that journal, Surgery for Obesity and Related Disorders, or SORD. Neil's well known. He gave grand rounds from, looked like his home in Connecticut. So this can be done, but interviews became online too. So the disadvantage is you can't really feel the place, you can't really see the center, and we as the faculty can't really interact the same degree with the candidate, but you definitely can conduct the interview without the expense, without the travel, without the headaches. So this is something that introduced a large change. Also in graduate medical education, specifically for surgery, perhaps the next huge change was by the American Board of Surgery and the other surgical boards, like the American Board of Colorectal Surgery, the American Board of Plastic Surgery, so on and so forth. For general surgery, it's a minimum 5 years general surgery. Many people spend 6 to 8 years, including research time, after which the qualifying examination is written. That's already been given remotely in testing centers around the country for at least the last 15 years. It's no longer flying somewhere to go to sit in a hotel room with a proctor. It's remotely proctored. And now all of a sudden, there's also remotely proctored oral examinations by computer. So Joe Beiske, who's one of my also a former past president of SAGES. Joe is the executive director of the American Board of Surgery, and she just tried a project of online examinations, but she has a big task because there's 1,143 diplomates from 2019. That's a lot of people to get through nationally in a highly secure fashion. So you can see the history of what's happened with education, starting in March with a travel ban, and then just to hit the high points, these are the testing centers at which people would go to do their written exams. So suddenly the testing centers are closed. So how do you do your written examination with the centers closed? And then exams started canceling. And then finally said, well, we can't just keep telling people they can't be certified because they can't work, right? Hospital bylaws say you must be either certified or eligible for certification. And basically, general surgery qualifying exam administered virtually, and it went well, I'm told. So that is, another change for the future. So now we have not only lectures and rotations being conducted in some virtual fashion, interviews being conducted, but even the examination itself. Then, of course, we get on to conferences around the world. With the American College of Surgeons, so far officially, the Quality and Safety Conference, which is July 24th to 27th in Minneapolis, is now instead a 100% virtual conference. A decision will be released soon about what's going to happen to the annual clinical congress in early October for Chicago. SAGES rescheduled twice, initially for March to August, and then canceled the August meeting. I'm not going to read all of these, you know what they are, but clearly postgraduate. So now we have impacts on undergraduate, graduate, and postgraduate medical education across the board. What's taken the place of these in-person meetings is what we're doing today. And this is the future of education at every single level. So these are some of the ones in which I've participated personally, not counting today. I mean, there's many, many more than on the slide. But all of us now are continuously giving these lectures in virtual format. That's education. It's not just the future of education, it's the present status of education. And I certainly would much rather be flying to Madrid and having a nice lunch or dinner with you, Julio, and Delia and Damian and my other friends in Madrid, but is not possible. So the next best thing is to be in this platform. We can share the same content. We can have the same question and answer sessions. And as these platforms become rapidly, increasingly more sophisticated, we can have private hallway conversations. You know, some of these platforms now say that, you know, Neeraj and I want to talk about something. We can have our own little room between lectures that we can have a discussion about something we need. And I'm sure as we, you, me, Neeraj, everybody else, Delia, everybody here today are doing these exchanges, people are putting it on social media. So even the people for whom a time zone doesn't necessarily allow them to participate, they can subsequently look and see what's going on, learn what people said about different things. And so I think this is key. The other facet, of course, speaking of doing it on your own time zone, is using an app, whether it's something commercially available like Touch Surgery, or something like UPNOL has been working on for years with DLive and iLab Surgery. There's many, many ways that people can participate remotely in education using the technology we're using today and using other similar platforms. So as I say, I definitely miss the travel. I'm going through some type of withdrawal, I'm sure, at this point. But it also allows us to participate in even more meetings with even more people than we would by going specifically to your meeting, my meeting, and so on and so forth. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I tried not to abuse the privilege of going much more than 5 minutes.
Oh, it was wonderful. Thank you very much, Steve. Questions?
Steve, thank you very much. Great presentation. Is this all going to just revert right back to the old ways when when there's a vaccine for COVID-19, or I don't think it will, but how much of it will stick? How much of this sort of disseminated education will become the norm?
I think it's going to stick for a couple of reasons. Number one, economics, that people have been furloughed, people have had pay cuts, hospital systems like mine have said, we don't want people traveling because we need you here, all hands on deck if there's another surge. Even when that's behind us, we're talking about tens of billions of dollars at the least, just in the US, that hospital systems will have lost, if not hundreds of billions by the time this is all over. People in individual practice are really suffering. They don't get a paycheck if they don't work, right? It's not like being an employee model. And around the world, governments are hurting. Look at the money the EU is putting in. So from an economic standpoint, it's much more cost effective to say, I'm taking 4 hours today to block my office, or maybe like now, do it on a Saturday. I don't need to take time away from work. So that I think is one driver. The second one that I think is going to be very important is I don't think travel is going to be as easy for a while. So many flights have been cut, nonstops don't exist to many places now that used to, and more changing planes, less opportunity for flights. So the travel becomes less convenient because layovers are longer, the time options are fewer, and so that's even more eating into your time and your productivity at work. And the other reason I think that it's going to stick is it really allows us to broaden our net for education, which again is part financial, but having speakers at grand rounds. We don't have to necessarily be limited to having somebody domestic come. We can ask somebody from Asia to give grand rounds. It's not going to cost them 3 or 4 days of their life to come give one 1-hour lecture. So I do think it's here to stay. Certain facets, no. I mean, medical students need to get on the ward and see patients. I mean, that has to happen. You can't be a doctor sitting in front of a computer all the time. You've got to get there and see patients. Surgical residents clearly need to operate. Those things will be there. But the educational components for those people is here to stay. I think board examinations are going to be virtual. Again, board examinations are very expensive. You've got to fly in all the examiners. People are in hotels for maybe 3 to 4 to 5 nights, depending on which board. Candidates have a huge expense. So there's a lot of drivers behind why I think these components will stick.
Steve, do you think that people need new skills in order to take advantage of this new way of get education and training?
You know, it's interesting. I think for the younger generation, I'm looking at some of the faces on the screen, and they're probably younger than my kids. And I think that, you know, for this, it's like walking or riding a bicycle. It's just, they know how to do it. It's really, really simple. They can do from their phone, their laptop, whatever they want to do. But I think for the older people, some of them are the ones that needed convincing. And I'm talking about people much senior to me, who, you know, still shun social media and think that you need to fly somewhere to have a face-to-face meeting for 2 hours. They, I think, have been pleasantly surprised because the technology has been made easier. So you get a link, you click the link. Even if you have trouble, you know, somebody helps you. It's really straightforward. Okay, each one is a little bit different, each of these commercial platforms, but the commonality is they're easy to use. And that's what's making it. And people now, the ones who I know who have been traditionally rather resistant, now appreciate the opportunity, because instead of waiting a month to see somebody face to face to discuss a topic, you do it the same day or the next day. You know, you eliminate the barriers, and you can accelerate. So I really think that the problems have been simplified by the technology being so user-friendly and so reliable. You know, there were initial problems with people getting in unauthorized and you know, disrupting meetings, but I think even that's gone away because there's different layers of security that one can opt. You can have meetings where you can lock the room and so on. You know, but it's our job to show people who are resistant to technology how easy it is to use. It's our jobs to show people how education is not thwarted or limited, but rather enhanced and abetted by using these platforms. And that's what we need to do, is keep highlighting how these platforms, whether it's social media platforms, whether it's online educational platforms like this, whether it's apps, how these things help us.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Thank you very much, Steve. It's wonderful to have you with us. It's really, it's impressive how you reply to all tweets and you reply to all the emails that we send you. You are really special. So thank you very much.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thanks for including me.